Hello. Hey, it's Nemato. Welcome back this week, guys, for episode 2 of the randomized Eurorack sessions. Before we jump into the patching, I just wanted to give a quick little thanks and shout out to everyone who has taken the time to listen to my latest track, Fracture. If you haven't yet, it's available on this YouTube channel as well as the various digital media streaming stores like Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your music nowadays. So thank you to everyone who has listened to that. This week, guys, the skiff that the internet has granted me to work with is right here. So the first thing that I thought when this random selector on the internet was picking out some of these modules and I saw that the Circadian Rhythms was selected, thank God. Looking across some of these modules in comparison to the ones that I had to work with in the previous video, this is definitely a skiff that I am much more comfortable with. A quick disclaimer here, originally the random selector had picked out the AJH Synth VCO as well as the VCA instead of this Future Retro and Basimilus module. The problem with that is that the Circadian Rhythms is simply a trigger and gate sequencer. So like I said before, the point of this is still to set myself up for the best chance for success when it comes to writing a song that I would expect you guys to want to download. While I could sit here and use probably a module like the Batumi to sequence a 4-step melody with one of those VCOs, ultimately it would probably lead to a melody that's pretty underwhelming, and there's nothing quite like watching a struggling musician struggle. So I did opt to randomize those two modules again, and that's how I came up with this Future Retro Transient module as well as the Basimilus Iteratas Alter from Noise Engineering. Also, I will say that I am by no means a Eurorack modular synth purist when it comes to writing music. I'm a big believer in having a combination of both analog and digital equipment. So when I look across this skiff, it is going to be a drum-focused song that I'll be putting together for this. My plan right now, looking across this skiff, is to probably create maybe 3 or 4 variations of drum patterns, and then I'll probably do some melody and synth creation in the computer over the top of the drums while still keeping this kind of the main focus of the whole song. So now that we have that out on the table, let's get into some patching. Okay, so obviously you can tell there's a lot of modulation going on with this drum patch that I have set up so far. I'm running this pattern at 175 beats per minute, and most of the modulation is coming from this Batumi quad LFO module. So you can see primarily the Batumi module is modulating all of the different parameters on the fracture to give me a lot of variation in kind of higher pitched drum samples that'll fill out the background. Surprisingly, I'm actually not using a snare drum at this point with this drum pattern. I'm just filling out the drums with a kick and then kind of like a higher kick or low tom sound. Depending on how the overall song goes and melody creation, I may end up adding a snare drum later. So there is also modulation happening over here on the scan and pan just to give a lot of left and right movement to all of these samples coming out of the fracture. The Basimilus module is where the kick is coming from, and then the kind of low tom is being triggered from this Future Retro Transient module. And lastly, I'm just triggering on and off some Freez kind of sample rate reduction to kind of give these little glitch sounds to some of the samples that are coming out of the fracture every so often. And here's what the drums sound like so far. So if you guys have listened to any of the latest music I've been coming up with, you know that I'm a big fan of having a lot of drum samples to work with. So I wanted to add to the first drum patch that I had created with all these fracture samples. So I've set up another patch here with the Future Retro Transient module. So I'm modulating the 2 CV parameters of the Transient module with the Batumi. The output of the Transient is running into the ripples filter, and I'm taking the bandpass out into the Freez module, so again I can get some more stutter glitch effects from this 2HP random. Ultimately going into the scan and pan module, and again I'm modulating the panning with the Batumi for more left and right interesting texture for this drum rhythm. So let's go ahead and record this patch in. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done some arranging within Logic, and what I realized with the drums is that it just really wasn't feeling as upbeat as I wanted it to for 175 BPM. Taking the low tom, high kick sound, whatever you want to call it, and rearranging it with some more like triplet style beats, it makes the whole drum pattern feel much more like what I was thinking in my head initially. So I'll solo just the drums for you, and this is what it sounds like now. Okay, and I like that a lot better for this song. And then for melody creation, what I have at this point, I'm using 2 bass lines or bass synthesizers. And one of them is really filling out kind of the real low end frequencies from like 30 to 100 hertz, which has kind of this grit to it. And then a second cleaner sub bass that's filling out more of the 100 to 200 hertz. Because of the fact that I'm using a kick that's really punchier, it's kind of a higher kick, I can fill out the whole bottom end of this track with that whole low end frequency spectrum. And then I have a few different layered pads for this melody. This pad is just kind of like a chord that stays pretty consistent throughout the whole song, and then I have more of this rhythmic pad that's kind of stuttered and kind of sweeps in and out. And lastly, using Alchemy, I have kind of this high pitch reverbed synth that's on a slow arpeggiator. And so once again, as per usual with me, LFO tool, I'm using this smooth feature across all of these, the bass and the pads, and just bringing in a little bit of LFO tool because again it adds this nice little movement to the whole track rather than leaving everything, you know, stagnant across the entire song. And so just smoothing in a little bit of this, it kind of oscillates maybe a half a decibel, all these different sounds, and gives this nice movement to the track. And on top of that, I'm also using, you know, some sidechain compression on a lot of these synths just to make sure that when the kick hits, these sub bass frequencies especially kind of duck a little bit out of the way of the kick. And so if I solo all the pads, what I have so far, this is what this sounds like. Okay, so nothing too flashy because I'm trying to make the drums kind of the highlight of the song, but what I'm realizing from this is that I definitely do want a snare drum. For the end of the song, I'm thinking kind of a half tempo, slow things down, and really emphasize the drums. So I'm going to record 2 snares, and then we'll wrap everything up with mixing and some of the tricks that I've done with some of the samples to just make sure that the song is interesting across the 3 to 3.5 minutes that this song will be. Okay, so the snare drums have been added, the arrangement and mix is all done. Last thing that I wanted to show you guys before I show you the song is I have these 2 breakdown sections in here where all I'm doing is taking an EQ to both the drum pattern as well as a pad sound, and I'm treating it like a bandpass filter. This is a technique that I like to do a lot just to kind of change up the overall sound of a song and add some variation to it. So filtering off the lows and the highs of these two samples, and obviously depending on the sound that you're using, you're going to want to filter this into your own taste. And that's pretty much it. Last thing, just like in the previous track, I'm running all the audio out through my Aphex exciter unit to give it a little bit more of that analog feel on the low end and add some extra harmonics. And without further ado, let's take it for the old car test. guys, that'll do it for this week's episode. Let me know down in the comments whether or not you guys like the length of these videos. I'm not sure in terms of music production concepts whether or not you want me to be more or less detailed, so your feedback is much appreciated. Just like the last episode, if you guys enjoyed this song, you will find it available for free download on my website. The link is in the description down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your guys' support means a lot to me. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next episode.